welcome to a new episode of A Crush on This. I'm Allison from Please the Palate, here with my friends Christine from Girls Go Grape and Cindy from Grape Experiences. And today we're going to talk about Tempranillo. Tempranillo is Spain's #1 grape. It is actually the fourth most planted grape in the world, and it is considered one of the 9 noble red grapes, but it is #1 in Spain. And I believe that we all have Spanish wines today because we fall in line. However, for those of you who might know of Tempranillo, but maybe you've heard other names, there's Sensibil, Tinto Fino, Tinta del País. Those are all names in Spain. There's Aragonés and Tinta Roriz in Portugal. So it's got a lot of names. So you may have had it in a different name and not had Tempranillo, although I'm sure you've had Tempranillos. This is a really, really old grape variety. And while the first writing of it was, the first mention was like in early 1800s, they say that the Phoenicians brought it over to Spain about 3,000 years ago. And the name comes from temprano. I know I don't have Spanish speakers here, but temprano meaning early, because it's an early ripener. Compared to other grape varieties in Spain, Tempranillo is our early ripener, so the name is appropriate. So Tempranillo, as I said, is the #1 grape in Spain, and it's grown in Rioja, Navarra, Ribera del Duero, Toto, Cigales, La Mancha, Ribera de Guadiana. It's also in the Down region and Alentejo in Portugal. It's one of the blends in port, in the fortified wine that we all love. It can also be found in California. It can be found in Southern Oregon. It can be found in Argentina, and it is found in Texas. So
Texas?
There you go.
Did you say Texas? What you talking about,
It's everywhere.
It's Canadian. They have wine in Texas, and Tempranillo is a dominant.
And in the Okanagan Valley.
Okay, and in Canada. There you go. So Tempranillo is everywhere. And it's sort of like, you can liken it that it's got the structure of Cabernet and it's got the meaty nature of Carignan. And together it makes this beautiful wine. So when it's young, it's fresh and fruity. And then when it gets older, it gets more like tobacco and leather and dusty flavors. So we'll play around today and see who has old and who has young. Who wants to go first? Cindy,
I'll go first. I'll go first. All right. So I am drinking the Baronia from Rioja, Reserva, for only $20. It is 95% Tempranillo, and then 4% Graciano and 1% Mazuelo, some indigenous grapes from Spain. Now, Reserva is a term used when the wine is aged for a minimum of 3 years before being released to the market. And that's what this wine is. It's produced, I mean, some of the best grapes from the oldest vineyards is in this wine from Baronia. It's a 2015. It's a little bit of oak, American oak staves, and then French oak for 19 months is the aging. What I'm loving about this is the aromas. I've got so much, I mean, it just like jumps out with vanilla and some dark fruit. Yeah, it's just jumping right now. And it sounds—
hold it in the glass.
I know, oh my God. But also I'm getting on the nose chocolate, baking spices, lots of these little touches of, oh my gosh, a little bit of espresso, but it's really refreshing and fruit forward. And then on the palate,
that extra aging, Cindy, is adding to those extra complexity, extra notes, extra layers.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's the combination of aging and oak that give it more of that leathery tobacco, whereas the fruit forward are for those very young, the Hovens, that don't see any oak.
Exactly. So this is a lot more complexity, structure to it. And on the palate, I've got blackberry, that oak and vanilla, and licorice, a little bit of anise. And it's got the sweet spice and more chocolate, and it's just delicious. So I'm thinking like red meats, games, casseroles, stews, throw something in the crock pot and just let it simmer and then just wait for this wine to pair with it. Sounds fabulous, right? But it also can age. I mean, I think this particular wine could age for a few more years, even like 3 or 4 more years. So highly recommend it. And for $20, beautiful.
Yeah, it's hard to hold on to a $20 wine and age it.
Right. I know, but yeah, buy one, drink it, age it, share with friends. The 3 bottle rule.
What about you, Christine?
Well, I did not do a Reserva, but again, I am doing 100% Tempranillo. It's Antonio or Antano. My
Antonio.
Spanish pronunciation just sucks. How would you say this?
Antonio.
I did it okay. Right on. So this is a 2016. It's a crianza, which again, the aging of that, I think, forgive me if I'm wrong, is a year minimum aging for a crianza. Is that correct? Before release in oak?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure of Rioja's rules, but it's usually somewhere between a year and a half, and then Reserva is usually about 2 years.
Yes. Okay. So I think this one
a minimum. Yeah.
This was a minimum of that 1 year. It is, very approachable, $13.99 in my market. So this has not got those complex notes, Cindy, that you talked about, but this is, pair this with some simple Spanish tapas, pair this with pizza on a Wednesday night.
Right.
Like this is not a bad wine at all.
No.
Color's quite beautiful. Definitely the vanilla is coming off. The sweet tobacco is coming through for sure. We've got some, actually it's like a crushed, beautiful raspberry and some minerality, which I'm a little bit surprised by. Loving it. This is produced by the JG Carrion massive estate in Spain, and they established themselves back in 1890. So they know what they're doing. They're crafting very good wines. Not, this is probably an entry level price point in their portfolio, and it goes up. But again, we don't always want to be spending $50 on a Tempranillo or something for a Wednesday or a Tuesday. We're okay spending $13.99, and that's what I like about this approachability to this wine. And Tempranillo and Spain as a category, it's quite affordable, especially in our Canadian British Columbia market. We don't have possibly as much choice as I'm assuming you might. I don't know in the United States, but the choices we do have really lovely quality to them, and they're incredibly affordable. And why wouldn't you try it? Yeah, so I'm happy with mine.
Well, what I love about Tempranillo too is it's such a food-friendly red wine. I mean, the acidity is moderate to just a little bit high, depends on how old your Tempranillo is. It's got good structure. The one in my glass is so balanced. Integrated tannins, bright acidity. I just can't think of a better night or wine from Monday night.
Well, I mean, that's what's kind of great, because if you like the structure of Cabernet, but are looking for something a little different, and from what you guys are describing, the tannins are more integrated, a little softer. It's not kind of knocking you over. And I actually have a somewhat special bottle that I opened. It's a 2009 Condado de Haza from Ribera del Duero.
Oh, now, I love that area.
What's really interesting is that, I mentioned earlier that Tempranillo is grown all over Spain, but in Rioja, Tempranillo is usually the main blending grape. Rioja is typically a blend of grapes. That's why it's interesting, Christine, that you have 100% Tempranillo, because Rioja is not typically 100% grape variety wine.
Yep.
Ribera del Duero, on the other hand, it is 100% Tempranillo, and that is part of what makes Ribera del Duero so special. And I had the pleasure to go visit there. I spent a Thanksgiving there a few years ago. It was colder than cold. There was a wind ripping through that I had never experienced in my life. It was brutal. But I just love, you have these vast plains, and there's a dryness in the air. You're at an elevation, and you're not near water. It's a continental climate, very cold in the winter. And there was a wine I used to work with, Ribera del Duero, and do in-store tastings around Los Angeles, where I would educate people on the region. And there was always this beautiful bottle of Pesquera, which is a very famous brand. And like Condado de Haza would have had an image of the winery on the label. And I had never been, and people would always ask me if I had been. So when I went, I said, I have to go buy Pesquera. this story does connect because Alejandro Fernandez, who's probably like the master, not just of Spain, of the world for Tempranillo, is the owner of Pesquera. And he is also the owner and winemaker of this winery. And when I was in the area, I visited a bunch of wineries and I was enjoying myself, but there was no time to visit Pesquera. But I begged the person driving me to the airport if we could please stop by the winery so I could take a picture, because I wanted to take a picture of the iconic winery that I could then say, see, it matches the label. And as we pulled up there and I'm taking a picture, a car drives in and this little Spanish man gets out, and it is Alejandro Fernandez himself.
No.
And I ended up meeting him. He was the nicest man. I have a photo somewhere, buried in my computer where like I'm standing, like he's coming up to like here on me. I don't know. He was a tiny little man. And it was just such an honor to meet this man because he knows what he's doing. And this was a second winery that he bought and refurbished the entire thing. It was an abandoned property, and Condado de Haza in the town of Haza. And it's a crianza like yours, Christine, but again, 2009, we're 11 years here, and it's still beautiful. Now, interestingly, they tend to use a lot of American oak with Tempranillo as opposed to French oak. So you get a little more of that kind of dill. And I'm just getting all of that kind of dust. I'm getting kind of like a raspberry kirsch aroma. And then it is like I can smell the kind of arid land that was there. And it's just kind of taking me back to that wonderful memory.
That's what I love about wine, Allison and Christine. You have a wine when we've all talked about, places we've been and we have a wine from there. It really does bring back those memories. And wine just makes anything so much more special, especially if you've done some wine travel.
I have to go to Spain.
And I'm going to tell you a food pairing for this wine. There is a special dish in Ribera del Duero. It's a PDO dish. Like, you have the DO wines. This is qualified. It's little baby lamb roasted in the oven, simple preparation. When it comes out, it even has a little tag on it saying that this is like officially like qualified as the PDO, and it is succulent and delicious and tender and perfect with Tempranillo. So,
okay.
It's called lechaza. I think that's the name of it, lechaza. So
you know what? We need to keep our minds open and taste the food of the region with the wines of the region, even though sometimes we may or may not, be gravitated to having that specific dish. I think that a part of traveling, a part of wine tasting is pairing and really trying to have a sense of the place. And when you have that dish presented to you with a gorgeous glass of Tempranillo, you kind of need to do it and go in.
It was also really good. And that was my Thanksgiving meal. Because like I said, I was there over Thanksgiving by myself. And I was heading down to the south of Spain for a conference afterwards. So that's why I went up there. And on my Thanksgiving, my friend there was like, you have to try our local specialty. And it was perfection. So
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tempranillo, there's a lot out there under different names. We'd love to hear if you have a favorite Tempranillo. It could be from British Columbia, it could be from California, it could be from Texas, or it could be from Spain. So share with us. Thank you for watching Crush on This. Join us next week when we open up a new wine and a new region. Follow us, share with your friends, give us comments, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Cheers, ladies.
Cheers.